it's right here.
Okay,
We
so
really
I
should
should put tape on
Oh,
some of
we're
these
on.
so we know where not to.
Hi.
Okay. I'm gonna call this meeting to order. It's 1:00-ish on May the 7th. We're gonna go a little bit out of order, so item number 3 will be read first. Discussion with representatives from the city's municipal court department regarding the FY 25-26 budget proposal. Want to come up? You might. Is it just you? You don't have any help today?
They're all behind me, so I can refer to
Oh,
them.
they're helping that
They
way.
helped prepare, so.
Yeah, good.
Do we want to go to the table or?
So we have,
Yeah, can we have the judges join us?
sure, they can.
If you don't mind.
So we've got about 20 minutes slated for
Yes.
this presentation.
So the
go.
slideshow that I have is much longer than that, but I have a segue in the middle that says questions, and the rest is just for your review later. I just wanted you to have more information than I had time to present.
You can change it.
Okay, can I?
Yeah,
Okay.
yep.
I think all of you know me. I'm Sherry Harville, the court administrator. Judge McCune here is across from me. You guys know him as well. Just gonna get right into the meat of the budget portion. We have 13 grant-funded positions within the court. We're spending about $39,000 per pay period with grant dollars. We have about $120,000 remaining in ARPA grant dollars that we anticipate will be expended by June 30th of this year. However, we have CRF dollars that we plan to move through, and there's about $1.8 million there. We anticipate that could last as long as 6/30 of '27 if we don't spend it on anything but personnel cost. In the mayor's proposed budget, the mayor's budget, I should say, we are funding one public defender that will go from part-time to full-time, and one municipal court supervisor position, and then in the financial plan for FY '27, a judicial clerk. That position supports courtroom. So with that, we had 13 positions with the 3 in the mayor's budget. We now have 10 remaining, and those positions are listed there for you. If we were to transition those, we anticipate it'll be about $789,000 for annual cost. There is no expiration date officially with CRF. The city will.
What does CRF mean?
COVID relief funds.
Thanks.
Now, the city finance department will determine, or the grants department will determine if that does have a hard expiration date, but from my knowledge, there is no federal expiration date on those dollars.
That was the first round.
Those were state reimbursement dollars, so they're,
And they're still sitting,
Yeah.
but they have the dollars in
yeah.
hand.
Yeah.
they
it's
pass
already-
through the state and
Explain.
they reimbursed overtime during COVID the first year.
Okay.
So they're not as restricted as the ARPA direct allocation that we received.
Some of
So
us
there were
are
2
first-timers,
allocations.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and those funds are already appropriated and in our balance, ready to spend.
Got it.
In the FY '27 financial plan, if we are going to continue with our ARPA-funded programs, those dollars will be fully expended and the grant will expire on 9/30 of '26. So we would need the financial plan for FY '27 to include funding for these programs if we're going to continue with them. We are working to identify additional funding streams as well as work with the partnering agencies of these programs to continue, maybe to split the cost. We're just still talking with them about what that might be. But the programs are case management support for our special services docket, a court advocate employee who's embedded in the courthouse every day, 40 hours per week. We have a Service Oklahoma employee in the courthouse, or the only one in the entire state of Oklahoma that has that. It has been incredibly successful, and we'll talk about that a little bit more as we move along in this presentation. We have a bus pass transportation assistance program, a driver's license testing program, which aids individuals who don't have access to a vehicle, or maybe one that's legal to drive on the road. So that allows them to take their exam, and the court pays that cost for them. We also, of course, have night court and then a financial counseling program, FEC. So just briefly going to go over the outcomes of the programs that we have initiated. Our special services docket, January 21st through December of 24, we had 460 graduates, $104,000 in fines and fees were waived, and $1.3 million estimated cost to the city jail for that program. Our court advocate, we started that program in July of 23, so through November of 24, she has had 978 participants, and 728 of those received housing referrals. And then our driver's license restoration program, from August of 24 through April of 25, we've had Service Oklahoma embedded in the courthouse. But they had 6,164 visitors to their office there. 4,524 of them received general information about how to reinstate their driver's license, and 1,640 of them actually did reinstate their driver's license. That is a wonderful metric, and it's helping out the court dockets quite a bit and giving people access to that service right in the courthouse while they're already there. And then the driver's license testing program, it was a little slow to begin. It's starting to take a little bit more traction, but we've had 8 people tested and passed their driver's license exam. Night court, it started in September of 23, and so the stats through December of 24. Of course, it's Thursday nights, 4 to 7 p.m. We've had 1,332 court appearances, 3,841 cases heard, 1,807 warrants were cleared, and then on that docket, we have about a 70% appearance rate, which normally is about 63%, so it is 7% greater than what we have normally. In the transportation assistance program, it started in September of 22, so the stats through December of 24, we've had 1,351 participants, 2,689 bus passes distributed, and then 82% of those defendants receiving a bus pass appear in court. So compare that to the 63%. Obviously, that's a 19% improvement rate. Financial counseling, the FEC program, started with the court in September of 23. The stats through December of 24, we've had 379 people referred to that program. 53 completed it, which was $26,000 in fines and fees that were able to be suspended. So I paused there because it's 20 minutes. I wanted to allow you time to ask questions. There are several more slides, but it's just the stats and volumes and staffing at the court. So you can look at that later if you wish, but I just wanted to make sure that you understand how these positions are being used in the courthouse. It's not just for program support, but just case volume support, appearance rate supports. We worked really hard to improve our appearance rates in the courthouse, and we're doing that every year. But with that, it comes a cost of, it takes longer because we have more people in the courthouse. You couple that with enforcement opportunities, with the police department, if they're making more arrests or writing more citations. We don't control that in the courthouse, but it does funnel through the court, so we have to staff appropriately. So what questions do you have?
I'll start out. Will you go back to the slide that has special services court? This one, the other way. This one right here.
This one.
Right here.
Yes.
Okay, so it's stated that there's an estimated cost savings to the city jail of $1.3 million. What's the cost for the program, though?
Oh, that is on here as well. To have case management support, it's $79,000 annually.
So for $79,000, we saved $1.3 million?
We'll also
That's to
waive,
have a dedicated person in the courthouse, a case manager in the courthouse, which does the intakes and assessments for that program.
Is that an additional expense beyond the $79,000? I just want to know all-in cost for special services court to achieve that kind of savings.
So that's just for the case manager. Give me just a second.
we also have to.
We have a
push
slide for that
revenue
as
bond
well.
on the fines, which I think is part of the goal in our reform.
Yeah.
I'm not worried about that.
Yeah,
It's just
but
It
Right.
is.
You can put it in as a
Do I not
cost.
have
Of the
that?
1.3 too, so yeah.
we also weren't collecting that, which was leading to more arrests for failure to appear and failure to pay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's true.
I don't
We're
think
gonna
I
get
do
most
have
of
that absolute number. I don't know if Grace has it off the top of her head. I thought I had it in there. I'm sorry, I don't have the
What does
total.
it feel like?
About $250-ish thousand per year. That would include the case manager. So I think probably another 180 to 200,000 for
so you-
complete encompassing entire program.
So $250,000 to save 1.3 million.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
I don't know why anybody would invest in that all day long. If we can keep it going, because it's beneficial from a quality standpoint and highly beneficial from a quantity standpoint. So I'm just, as you've heard me say in ARPA meetings and everything else, I'm just trying to get to a point where I can derive the best return on investment. Because I know not all these programs are gonna probably survive. There's just going to be a place where our budget is not able to support everything that we started with ARPA. This one stands out. Driver's license restoration may stand out, but I would love during the next presentation for you just to rank order them, to give us that,
Okay.
the cost and the benefit. And then for the four of you, I know Judge Hoffmeister isn't here, and I don't really know how you're organized and do all that work. But to say to us, look, if you were going to have to preserve or cut, I would hope that you would do it in this order.
Absolutely, we can do that.
Okay.
But as a
Yeah,
clarifying
go
question to
ahead.
what Councilor Leaf was just asking, just to make sure I understand, for special services court, is that staffing that's like shared with, because there's okay.
Yes, it's
So
the
it's like
case
parts of
management
roles.
out off-site. They have meetings, they have check-ins monthly, sometimes more often, and then it includes the embedded person within the courthouse. So it's
Okay.
all the entire program wrapping around.
But I was curious, I was just trying to understand, is some of the staffing for that part of other programs too, or just that program?
That's just that
Okay.
program.
Okay, and then Dr. Wright?
So I have a question on this financial counseling with the discrepancy in numbers and the low outcome of the completed program.
So
What-
everyone has a goal that's different between, it's very individualized. So it's not that there's a failure there. They may still be in the program, they just haven't graduated yet or completed whatever their goals are.
How long has that program been?
It's been in since September of '23, but we recently increased their staffing within our courthouse. So we're starting to see the numbers improve there as well, but it does take anywhere from, 3 visits is the minimum that they're required to attend, and then it could take 6 months or a year for them to meet their goal. It's very individualized.
Who staffs it?
The Financial Empowerment Center.
Okay, does the FBC, okay.
And for a period of time, there was a little bit of a lag. We actually had defendants reaching out to them that were not able to get appointments scheduled because they just didn't have enough staffing originally. Now they're all caught up, so there may have been a little bit of a time lag too, that people just could not get into the program. We had a lot of people reaching out.
So, to piggyback on that, how are the unsheltered population, when they get fees and fines and they stack up, where does that play out in all these numbers?
All over, across
That's
all
kind of what led to
all
some of the
them.
reforms.
Okay.
Because previous to the reform work of fines and fees, I think the statistic we received in the summer of 2019 when we had those equality indicator hearings
Yeah.
was that 40% of TPD's arrests were for failure to appear and failure to pay.
Right.
So we were alarmed at that statistic for a lot of reasons. Obviously, TPD needs to be arresting people that are doing, violent crime in our community, not just can't pay. So that's the work that Counselor Lakin led with the reiteration of a variety of counselors since 2019. That led to these ARPA-funded things so that we could pilot and test out best practices and refine before we started having to do this exercise of, a little bit of Hunger Games of who were moving off the grant-funded positions into the general fund.
Okay, I just wondered what the cost to put them in jail as opposed to the cost of working with them, if you could find them.
Well, we know that's always.
Well, that's
more
what this
affordable.
alternative court is.
Okay.
And they also do Rule 8
I was
hearings.
gonna ask Judge if he wanted to talk about.
For
Rule
those of
8.
you who are newer to the council, you might just want to visit with them about Rule 8 and their alternative courts and things. I know Counselor Bingle he fast-tracked himself when he came onto the council to kind of become very well acquainted with the programs.
Okay, great.
But they are reducing that kind of cycle. Of course, not everyone can be diverted for whatever reason. But I think that's what Counselor Lakin's talking about too. We did a little bit of an analysis of like continuing to do what we've always done is costing our community in intangible and unintangible ways, right? It's not great to have someone that just keeps going in that revolving door, which is also when we were scaling up housing solutions that did not exist in 2019. So the outreach and all of that is kind of dovetailed.
Thank you.
You're
I
welcome.
appreciate that.
Am I next?
Yep.
Okay, so the FEC is augmenting some of this, I guess I'm trying to understand, because we're funding the FEC, but then is the municipal court like taking a portion of that?
Yeah, I actually asked them that at Monday's staff meeting when I heard about that. I don't know yet what
Okay.
that includes, so that'll have to be a discussion that's had. I'm not sure what your funding level is, I'm not sure what that covers, but there definitely could be discussion if it would encompass time within the courthouse, because what we're asking for and our outcomes is literally just a case manager to be embedded in the courthouse. And they're there 3 days per week for a couple hours each day, I believe.
Sarah has some additional information.
I think, so this is a separate funding line from the FEC funding line that you see in the budget in a
Right.
different department. Is that what your question
I'm
was?
asking why there's two, like, why is it not integrated all under FEC and then they
Oh,
send?
I think because this program came on as part of like the fines and fees, which was ARPA, so they were naturally separate, and then the funding lines.
So we
funded
could
through that.
potentially integrate for efficiencies, potentially.
Yeah, it probably just depends on how many case managers you maintain for the program. But yeah, they're two different funding lines right now.
The other thing I wanted to ask about, so Service Oklahoma's has opened the facility at the Farm Shopping Center at 51st and Sheridan. So I don't know what kind of access to that might play. I was actually on this driver's license restoration work with Judge McCune and Sarah and Elizabeth Tinkard and Comron when he was doing that. So that was another thing that we saw reflected in our community is the people that don't have driver's license. A lot of the reasons they don't is because they could only have to go out east and takes forever to get an appointment or whatever their issues are. Some young people's family doesn't have a car that passes inspection to even take your driver's test. And so that was some work that we did, I think, back in 2019. But I'm just wondering if having like another Service Oklahoma access point for Tulsans might free up some of that expense. I don't know.
Maybe the judge could answer like the practical courtroom impact
Sure.
of Service Oklahoma being there for like resource alone.
So having them embedded in the courthouse, what it does is we literally, like today, yesterday, all week, I'm sending people during the docket, run down to Service Oklahoma. It looks like this is what's holding you up, okay? And then they'll go down there, they will get reinstated, and they will come back, right? So the seriousness of it is that about 10 years ago, they changed the law. So 10 years ago, if you drove under suspension, you caused an accident, somebody died, as best as I can reflect, you were charged with a misdemeanor negligent homicide. Now you're charged with felony manslaughter. So having people getting licensed because they're trying to go to work to feed their kids makes us all safer when they go in there and get licensed. We've had folks that have not had any capability to get licensed on their own for 5-10 years. They get into our courthouse, and when they see the Service Oklahoma folks at our courthouse, these are the top line Service Oklahoma personnel. I mean,
I see
they're seeing-
40
they're seeing a
people
lot
per
of,
day.
like, people at like supervisor level that are there, and they're just helping these folks get licensed. So having it there, having as many spots as you get in Tulsa is awesome. We need it.
Yeah.
But having it there is fundamentally transformed not only the ability of people to get licensed, but it's also allowing us to try to, our dockets have gotten so massive that it does help reduce some of our docket flow. We don't have the staffing anymore to, in my opinion, Ms. Harwell can talk about it, to keep operating the way we're doing it, and that is helping us alleviate some of our pressure, because we're not having them go out to Eastgate. It takes 5 or 10 hours, come back, and we gotta give it a new court date because they can't get back in time. Right now, we're doing it in 5 minutes, so
And
it's
it
impressive.
saves citizens a lot of time, because I will have people who literally say, I don't have the first clue what to start doing to get my license. I'm like, great, you're in the right place. So we send them down the hall, they get the list, they literally can walk into court records, get their letters of compliance, walk it back to Service Oklahoma just down the hallway. So they leave the courthouse already ahead of the game. They have the list of what they need to do, they've got their letters of compliance showing they've come and cleared their bench warrants, and then they just have to take care of whatever's left. And as Judge McCune said, a lot of them, it's not uncommon to have people literally get it right on the spot. So.
The final question I had was about the bilingual, the bilingual office admin. Is that the position we added to help with the juvenile docket and the night court situation?
No.
Okay.
That is embedded in court records, so they're there 40 hours per week. The night court and the juvenile is a contract employee
Okay.
that we bring in just to do interpretation for those dockets.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we have time for 2 more questions. Bingle, then Archie.
Yeah, obviously, if I was gonna be as Judge McCune always says in his, at the beginning of his docket, he says you're a citizen first and a defendant second. So I love that attitude. Obviously, if I was a defendant or I had a citation or infraction, this would be the place I'd wanna have to go to court in front of. Our judges do a great job in trying to figure out how to help the citizens first. The transportation, that's pretty significant. What is the average cost of a bus pass? Is, or where, I know what the cost of a bus pass is.
It's about 33.
Let me say this again. Where are we having the highest impact within the city with that specific program?
Are you talking about zip code?
Right.
I don't have that off the top of my head. We are tracking that, however.
Okay.
I can get that
I thought
for
you were.
Yeah, we have
But I'd
it,
kinda
but-
like to know where the heat map of this is.
Yeah, we can do it
Where
by
the
zip code.
recipients are from.
Yep.
But a lot of them, I will say, when we've looked at it, a lot are transient, and so we don't have a zip code recorded. We would just have to use like a downtown zip code, so it may not be entirely accurate on,
Right, but that'll at least tell you where
Downtown.
most of that is coming from.
yeah. It's wherever the officer picks them up, they're just gonna put transient, so.
So to do this choice ranking that you've asked on the staffing pattern, when would we need that by?
I don't know. That was gonna be my last parting question, is what do you need from us? Do you need anything in this budget year? It seems like you just need in the plan.
In the plan,
27.
correct.
For
Yeah, the
27.
plan is, the,
Go on this budget then?
the plan is
Well-
very important for the programs to continue.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, the plan, the
We gotta bake
plan
it
is
into this
definitely
one.
visionary, but it's
Yeah.
not where the rubber meets the road. I just know that when cuts are being made, then we're going to have to make them from one department or another. And the more clarity we get from your department, the better we're able to serve all departments. Okay,
I think I went.
Counselor Bingle, are you
Counselor.
Yes, I'm done, thanks.
finished? Okay, Archie, yours
Yes.
is the last.
Thank you so much for this presentation. I'm learning so much. I have a question about the 728 housing referrals. Can you paint me a picture of just what that looks like? Are you working with Housing Solutions, Housing Authority? And I'm curious, of those referrals, how many receive housing?
I would have to look that up to see what those numbers are. We have, Family and Children's Services case manager embedded in the courthouse, and she keeps all those stats. And I can look that up and get that back to you, but off the top of my head, I don't know the exact, number of how many are actually housed. It can take a year for someone to be housed, but I imagine she tracks them for a certain amount of time. So I can look that up and see if we can find that information and get it back to you.
But the referrals are through Family and Children's Services?
I'm sorry, yes, Family and
Okay.
Children's Services.
Is that subject to the funding that they're looking at losing from the state?
I do not know.
Okay,
We've not had those conversations with them.
something to consider.
Okay, so your request today is what, as it relates to the budget?
For FY
For the
'26, for this next year, Nothing.
good.
The mayor, funded a couple of positions for us and has
Yep.
one in the plan.
Uh-huh.
So it's really more about trying to transition maybe all of the positions that are remaining. It's like 789,000. That's a lot to do in 1 year, so I would hate to to keep pushing that out until the CRF dollars are gone, and maybe try to fund half of them in the plan for FY '27,
So-
for the ones that you deem to be the
So
most
is half of them
appropriate.
337? Okay.
And
And it's
do
10
half and
total
half.
And is
There's
it,
10
is it in
remaining.
there right now, or is it not in there right now? Is the 337 in the plan right now? Does the plan read as you want it to?
It's just
There's
61.
no. There is nothing in the plan. There's one judicial clerk position in the plan right now, which is one,
So you need the plan to say 337
Yeah.
plus 337.
Or 6
Okay.
positions, actually. This position plus 5 from this list.
Or 252, because it is, you said you had through 9/30 of 26.
Is
We
this,
do.
this is the same,
that's the programs.
is this the same judicial clerk on this?
No, it's a different, it's a second one.
So it's 11 positions total.
So half of this, 788, would be
And
beautiful.
5 of these positions plus
The
that
37,
one, plus the one already on.
so there's
Okay,
13
what is
total
this slide
positions,
I was gonna ask the same
three
question.
are funded. 3 are funded, we have 10
Page
remaining.
2, slide 3.
Oh, I know, I'm trying to figure out what this slide is for then.
Yeah, that's what I was.
Where are you at?
What I was.
This
right
is,
here.
Slide
this is
5.
programs. This one's programs, so it's a 9-month, because the money expires on 9/30, and that's 3 months into the year, so we need 9 months of funding in the plan, but I figured you would ask what the annual cost is, so I provided both the annual cost and the 9-month cost
So basically, you just need 788 divided by 2.
for the positions, because this one we're talking about right now is programs, yes. It's two different
Okay.
things.
Do you need 394 plus 337, or just 390?
That's what I was-
394 is half of 788.
Both. I need plus.
Okay, so
We need
394 plus 337.
We need 252, 975 in the FY
for the 9
'27
month.
plan,
Yep.
plus the program money of the 252, 975.
Oh, plus,
Let me,
So you need.
sorry, I need both.
You need
Yes,
both columns.
one is positions and one is programs.
okay, so 252 plus whatever that is that I just said.
337.
Yes,
Yeah.
half of, so 340, 350, 377
So you need
for
both of these.
positions and 252 for programs, if we were to do all of those programs.
Okay,
And fund half of the positions.
So half of this and both of these.
okay, we need to move on, so
Only
thank you all very much. Sorry
Only one.
that we got a rock, we won't make it
Thank
through the
you.
rest
Thank
of
you
our
very
day.
much.
We don't, appreciate it. Item number 2 is executive order pursuant to Article 3, Section 1.6 of Tulsa Revised Charter, abolishing prior divisions and creating a division and establishing some departments superseding all previous executive orders. Someone from the mayor's staff here who wants to walk us through this?
Oh, no, I just think your warnings.
I did. Just a joke. It's always a joy to see all of you.
Sorry, I'm all spread out.
Giant pieces
Oh, sweet. How about you just hand them to me and I'll take one and pass them down?
That sounds amazing.
And then we'll do 1, 2, 3. Take one, pass it down, please. I'll share. It's not on a yellow piece of paper. Wonderful, thank you for having us. We appreciate the discussion.
You bet.
Just wanted to walk through our executive order, which was written pretty succinctly. So I can just walk through the main points, and then folks can ask questions. That sounds good? So within the executive order, we created 2 divisions. One being the public administration, so that is Mike Miller. That covers about 61% of the overarching city budget and 2,167 employees. The other division that we created was the Division of Public Safety. So Laurel Roberts is our Commissioner of Public Safety, is the head of that division. That reflects about 28% of the overarching budget and roughly 2,067 employees. So those two divisions together manage about 89% of the budget and roughly 4,200 employees within the city.
4,200?
I think so, yeah. 4,234. Yeah. So it,
3,500 employees.
in the budget book, it actually noted the new,
Compared with Mike's, that's like 6,000.
How many employees do we have in the city of Tulsa?
what?
Only serves 3,500.
If you look at 4-122, page 4-122 in the budget book, you'll actually see the updated total number of employees within the city. I believe is 4,270. So these divisions cover a good chunk of the employees within the budget.
Can you give me that one more time?
Maybe we have
Four,
3,500
Josh?
full-time.
122.
Yeah.
122 of section 4.
Just the last page.
Thank you, Jack.
So if I were to write the word division over two boxes, I would write it over city administrator and commissioner of public safety, right?
Correct.
Section 4.
Yeah. We could have made them bigger boxes, sorry.
What's that?
We could have distinguished them a little bit differently on
Oh.
the page.
It's all rudimentary stuff. I just don't know what the left half is. Are those under a division?
Nope, so those are all, some departments, some managed by the mayor's office, but our intention here was to ensure that like the bulk of the folks being managed by these two individuals were covered within an overarching division.
Okay.
So you can see the large percentage of the budget, and the large sort of operational staff management. From there, we additionally created 3 new departments. So the Department of Neighborhoods and Planning, I know that you're hearing from James in a bit. We have additionally created the Department of Animal Services. So this is under the Division of Public Safety. Planning and Neighborhoods would be under the Division of Administration. And then we have turned what was once the Mayor's Office of Resilience and Equity into a department, so that is the Department of Resilience and Equity.
And that still includes compliance, like, you know, when our city used to have a human rights department that incorporated the compliance element. Crystal's not a week, so I'll take that as a yes. Okay, just was checking.
And that's really it. Sort of a brief overview. Answer any additional
Okay, so for Sarah or Jack, this is required to be presented to us, and then it becomes effective if we would fail to take action, but action is slated for the 21st. May I have any? Sure.
Under resilience and equity, like what is falling under that? I know the Office of Family, Children, and
Yep,
Youth.
so the contract would be within the department or managed within.
Can you enumerate what those are that we would find in our budget too?
The Office of Children, Youth, and Family. The deputy mayor additionally manages the Office of Public Art and Community Engagement.
And that's a new or a move from DCE.
Yeah, it's a move of a position.
And it's called what? Office of Community Art and
Public Art and Community Engagement.
Public Art and Community Engagement. And where does Dr. Pasha fall into all of this? Is it all
Sure.
under there?
Nope, so Dr. Pasha actually reports directly to the mayor.
And what is that? Is that
What's the dark blue one?
The community health. Which is right next to legal.
Senior Advisor of Community Health,
Yeah.
senior?
bottom
where?
left.
Right.
Oh, down here. Okay, and is that that's gonna be an office of one?
Yep, so he currently serves as a senior advisor to the mayor.
Okay.
The ultimate goal there will be to work on building out an overarching office, similar to functioning similarly to like what Dr. Hubbard does with mental health.
So a parallel. And where does Dr. Hubbard's office sit?
She's still within the resilience and equity.
And going to stay over there?
Correct.
And what is that office called?
I think it's just the Office of Mental Health.
She's just an office of one?
Yeah.
Like, okay. Chief mental health.
She's a grant funded.
Say it again, Sarah?
Position.
She's grant funded.
It's a
No,
grant.
she is not grant funded. There are
But she
some
has
grants
grants
of grant funded positions that fall under her.
Under
Right.
there.
Am I correct? Okay.
Under the chief mental health officer, there's grant funded positions?
Yeah, for the, there's the opioid, there were opioid grants, and then there were some children-based grants, correct? So say, you probably can answer this better than I can, but, yeah.
Okay. And is that one position or two? I think one thing that might be helpful as we refine how we do our budget, I would love to see like a asterisk or some sort of designator that says grant funded positions this much or whatever, because it's something that we've been trying to track in the small budget committee. So that we're mindful as we start doing like ROI assessments and just what achieved outcomes are to justify bringing positions onto the general fund. We can know when we're approving a budget, so many of these are on a grant and it sunsets or dovetails or whatever. Yeah, that's just, I think last year we had like a separate chart in small budget committee, but as I was digging into this, I thought it would be really helpful to just see kind of where those grant funded initiatives, programs, materials, equipment, a lot of the times in our public safety office or actual personnel.
Yeah.
Do you want, I can clarify just really quick on chief mental health officer, that's a general fund position that was funded last year, and then 4 positions under Dr. Hubbard are grant funded, and they're multi-year grants, so.
4 positions, okay.
Including Children's Mental Health Initiative, Community Violence Intervention, Emmett Till Grant, and the opioid abatement grant that we got from the state.
So the Emmett Till grant is the mass
Community
graves,
genealogy.
is the mass graves? Okay, and then under the Office of Public Art and Community Engagement, is that a staff of 1?
Currently, yes.
Okay, and that's the plan for this year, to keep it at 1 person?
So matched with that is the $150,000 worth of vision grants. Follows that position.
So the project management of Vision Art grants?
Okay.
But Vision Art grants aren't funding the position?
No.
Chart of this,
No.
Okay.
or something.
So this, what you have in front of you in terms of staff is reflective of the executive order of just like mayor's office staff, department heads and divisions and department heads. So that's why like the additional detailed information that she's asking about is not included on this.
But there's dollars allocated to these positions that we have to be mindful of, correct?
Sure.
Yeah.
Hey, because we're starting to encroach on the next agenda item, let me just go ahead and read it, just in case we flow over into that. They're gonna be up here for the next agenda item anyway. I'm gonna still try to keep us on point, because we only have until about 2:40 or so. So I'll read it. Discussion with Mayor's Office, Finance Department, and Department representatives regarding the proposed FY '26 budget and capital plan. Archie and then Bellis.
Yes, so this is a structural question. Senior Advisor of Community Health, the Office of 1. I wonder, why isn't
So,
it?
hold on, wait a second. It's not an office of 1. I have a number of appointments that work directly for the mayor. That is one of those appointments. It's not an office currently,
Okay,
just an appointee.
okay. I appreciate that.
Yes, sir.
Why isn't it under the Chief of Staff along with like Gene and Department of Government Affairs? I feel like that would be, that person would be up at that level. Do you think?
Yeah, that person is at that level of a professional within the mayor's office, but everybody in the mayor's office, including the chief of staff, city administrator, they all ultimately report up to me. So like, it's a structural deal, and that's the way we've kind of structured the mayor's office. But so, yeah, that's just the kind of for my individual office, how we've staffed that portion of it, since that's one of the appointees that we have.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's a direct,
He's a direct report to
Correct.
you, as is the chief of
Correct.
staff.
Yeah,
It
the
just looks a
blues.
little odd on
Yeah.
this
Sure.
chart
That's fine.
because
The blues
it
on between.
looks like it's higher up, but it's
Sure,
really,
sure, it's
not
equal,
higher up.
it's lateral.
It could be,
Yeah, 100%.
yeah,
We don't
we
have
had
bigger
a bigger piece of paper.
Yeah,
Sure.
100%,
Or smaller.
100%.
So the blue I'll report to you, Mayor.
Actually, not just, there's some green that reports to me as well, actually.
So economic development, legal, communications, all.
Okay.
Anybody on
Correct.
that line?
Okay.
Correct.
It's just individuals versus.
Yeah,
I got you.
Yeah, correct.
One's administrative, I got you.
correct.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just a funny, the picture is not accurate necessarily. I mean, it is.
Yeah,
but
what,
it
what,
looks a little bit
I wouldn't
off.
wanna make the org chart. that
well,
we
what,
set
one,
ourselves out.
one of the things that we, so one of the things that, I know communications, because we had so many things run up, all together.
I'm not blaming.
We'll get something that's more aesthetically pleasing, that's a little bit clearer, because it is a little crazy. This is actually a version that, that I created early on, so I'm trying not to take it personal. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. But to show you the level of, skill it took to do this particular one, it was one that I had started, so I will, we'll make sure we get one that's a little cleaner, so you guys can see it a little easier.
Phyllis and then Paul Harper.
Yeah, just to understand, this is like one office-specific question, and then just a structural one. Going back to the advisor for community health, since there's an intention to form it into a full department, this is just a curiosity of, is that where it's like this year, it's like, right now it's a person that's an advisor, and then we're looking into the plan budget year where you're adding staffing, or is that like?
I think, so I think the intention is maybe not a department, but an office, right? So we can build something out. So one of the things Dr. Posh is doing right now is actively working with health systems and other community partners to figure out what is a more of a centralized way in which we're thinking about community health overall. And so like, I think we will vet, does that need to be an office within the city? I think we all feel confident that it's a role that we should be playing, just given the numbers that we see. And so what you'll see is not necessarily an outline of a decision we've already made, like how many people work in anything like that. What you see is more of us having this role here that's, because we know there's a critical role that we play, and Dr. Posh is playing that role right now. I think the question we're gonna ask ourselves over the next year is, does that lend itself to establishing an office? What are the specific roles the city could play different from what other folks are doing? Much like, and I think this was the point earlier, much like we've done with the chief mental health officer, right? It started like a person, it's like, okay, let's fill out this office, and it includes these things.
And then I was just gonna comment that it's exciting to see animal services incorporated into public safety. I know that's been a conversation for a long time. I'm out of curiosity, just because this was something that came up when we formed, like, previously Department of City Experience and Public Works, where you have two really big departments, and then it's how do they communicate with each other? this is just a curiosity, and I remember at one point Mayor Bynum was like, we'll have a committee across these two large departments, and this is how they'll talk, or knowing that projects, right, like, I'm thinking about those capital improvement projects that exist across, like, I think this is kind of something that the design studio was doing related to if there was like an arts grant and then an active neighborhood project and then capital improvement things that were happening at the same time, kind of weaving all that together, seeing where you have kind of, you're planning in arts and culture, and then I can see under the city administrator, of course, you also do have some of those infrastructure pieces, but then separately under resiliency and equity, then you have like some additional arts placemaking pieces. I was just curious how those all talk to each other.
Yeah, one of the reasons why, and I'll say, we have the city administrator position, the two deputies, and how we work now that interacts with myself and the Commissioner of Public Safety, so we all are always thinking about how those divisions come together. I will say, like, one of the things we thought about is like, it was really important for me that the folks who are in charge of the maintenance of our facilities, we know that's something we always kind of get behind on, are on the same team with the people who are helping design. And I think as we now are going to be more intentional about an arts office, now we have a place where that lives, and so it's like hopefully an easier line of communication between the two. So I think in my mind, the way that we're structured, the way that we manage the organization is going to take care of a significant amount of that. But I really want a role that we play again in the public art scene and engaging local artists, and then being able to meld that over to some of our physical assets. I have a high degree of confidence that where it worked well in the past, it'll continue to work well. I think we'll actually be able to strengthen it a little bit in this new setup.
That's exciting, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, Hall Harper, and then we're gonna move on.
And I hate to add more words, but if possible, could you put the names of the staff that's responsible for each one? Sure. Because I know we have new people.
You mean like the department heads for all the
Yeah.
departments? Sure.
Department heads' names.
Yep, happy to.
If not on this, I know, we had another chart that had pictures. This is for me.
I think that was
'Cause
created by
I need a
Sarah.
face with a name for me to learn who you are. and
Yeah,
I
it
gotta
needs
see
to
you.
look like really old school Facebook.
We will make sure that all happens. We'll even, maybe we'll do an
At some
old
point.
school church directory and get all the
Yeah,
names and
that-
everything. We'll do the
it
whole
is
thing.
helpful.
I'll get my old post from
Because I
church.
see people in the elevator, I'm like, I know your face, but I have no clue who you are. You know, so that's just me.
We can certainly do that. We'll make sure we do that. I think the ask is just like from the, just real quick, from the, like the department head level. is what
Yeah,
you-
that's what I'm doing.
And mayor's
Just
office staff.
department,
is what it is. Happy to do it. That's all.
People that we would engage with.
Happy. Turns out we got everybody's pictures already, whether they like them or not.
Yeah. Mug shots.
Well, no, whoa, easy there. None of those, unless you guys know something I don't know.
Okay, so let's move to the next budget item. This last element, Sarah, that says Mayor's Office and Mayor's Office of Economic Development. Is it better to leave these people here at the table and go through that one first?
You can if they're ready to go through there. So
The
the,
last one looks like.
It's
Finance.
just really a schedule so that I can keep track of,
This one.
Yeah, which
So
one?
every-
This thing.
just,
everybody has a
Which one we
copy
on?
of
yeah,
that.
just move the very bottom one to right now,
Oh,
because they're here at the table.
Oh, I see. Okay, I have a.
Just to frame this a little bit, we received questions, we compiled those questions, sent it to these departments, so these questions are kind of guiding their presentations.
Okay,
I have a question for the moron in that case.
okay, so
where are the questions?
What question? What questions are you talking about?
Ones that were
just the
sent over that they're
breakdown
gonna.
of budget changes to the mayor's office and clarification correction to the MOED budget. So that's what they're,
Did we cover like Parks Department and all this?
No, we're gonna go back to
yeah,
that.
we'll go back to that
Okay.
because they're at the table.
Got it.
We'll come back.
Just trying to follow along.
Yeah, we're doing bottom up. LIFO.
So- I believe some of the questions that we received around the Mayor's Office of Economic Development can sort of easily be fixed. So there is an errant $57,000 in the department's 51 salaries budget, so
What
it
page is that? Sorry. From section 4,
Oh, hold on, I have some page numbers.
449.
thank you.
Yeah, 476.
476 or 449?
476 is the start of the section.
Yeah.
449 and there's
476
50,
is
what
where
did
we're
you say?
at.
I'm sorry.
there's included in the salaries, there's a $57,000 that is an errant inclusion into that portion of the budget.
Is that this fiscal
So
year
we got
one?
$57,000 back.
Out of the 127 or
476.
out of what?
Yes.
Okay, so negative 57 off the
Really bad.
127.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No one got $127,000.
That's what it looked like, so
Yes,
thank
it
you
did.
for clarifying.
Yeah, so that I think is like the very first sort of note, technical change that will need to be made in this space.
I sure hope we can find a place to use that money. I don't have any requests.
We're using less fund balance, or?
It's okay, you can keep going, we'll come back to questions.
Okay, perfect. So additionally, because our Director of Tribal Partnerships and Policy does a lot of economic development work, we have actually, there's a portion of her salary that is within the Mayor's Office of Economic Development. The additional reason as to why that would be confusing is because on this page it shows as one person's salary, noting half of her salary is actually there too, so that one could be a 1.5, though then it would cause problems in other
On the
spaces.
FTE,
Yes.
Correct.
that's a 1.5, and is that the other part of the 127 minus the 57?
That is actually absolutely correct.
Yeah, out of that 80, right? Are we still talking 127, or are we talking 127 minus 57?
127 minus 57.
So
So the 80 is
Seven-
that
seven.
other staff position.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
And we'll get to
And that part of that staff position staying in that bucket, okay, like into the plan year.
You have a question?
Oh, yeah, I'm just trying to follow.
On this part, and then we'll have a free-for-all at some point.
Mine's for the,
He said
I'm
80,000?
queuing up for the finance.
70.
It's
Oh,
70.
70,000,
Okay,
okay.
I said 80, and then I said
Okay.
70, because I did the math.
Oh, yeah, I did,
Thank
sorry.
you.
Yeah, I think my question
So
is actually
that-
for the
that
finance department.
Fiscal year one on page 4-49 should actually be a 70K, not a 127K. And that 70K is for this other position that is allocated to economic development, the director of tribal policy.
And for clarification, that 70 is inclusive of both salary and benefits.
Of the 1.5.
Well, the 0.5%.
Oh, just
Just the portion of the travel policy partnership position.
Yeah, this is actually 70. And we'll get a technical change.
Yeah.
Well, we can, are we gonna update
Last
these
Friday.
budgets? Just get a whole new budget update
Yeah.
with the clip, we'll do that.
There's technical changes.
So-
Yeah, we'll do that.
And Sarah sent you an email that has the exact dollar amounts. So
Yeah.
we're talking about rough numbers, the exact dollar amounts are in the email that you have.
Yes.
I think it's good we're saying it publicly.
No,
because A lot
absolutely.
of us got messages about
Yeah.
what is this and
Sure.
why. So-
No, yes, no, absolutely. I just want to make sure that that we have we're all looking from the same page whenever we get to technical corrections. That's going to be what you've already have.
Thank you.
Okay, anything else on this item? If not, we'll move to the Neighborhoods and Planning Department, then to Parks, and then we can come back and just ask other questions that are popping in our brains relating to this agenda item.
Thank you.
You have a question, or is there a thought?
Is there, seems like
Not
there's.
something we
what
should
was it?
cover?
I think there was another question under your mayor's office one, but they may just be leaving handouts on
What's
that one.
was this about, what was this about?
Just the changes in the mayor's office budget. So there was the mayor's office of economic development, and then there are also the presenters on just the mayor's office budget. Those are two different.
Yeah, there's a large increase in the
Budgets.
mayor's budget.
Oh, yeah,
Except
just the breakdown of the budget
476.
changes to the
Yeah,
mayor's office.
correct.
Got it.
Page 476.
Like, yeah.
Yeah, there's a significant increase, unless we're reading it wrong.
Yeah.
Mike, you wanna get us started here?
Yeah.
So just to clarify, it's $945,000 suggested increase for this coming fiscal.
Right, so I think there's three big things to know. The first thing is that it reflects employees being moved from the old Department of City Experience. So that if you look at a corresponding page for that department, you see they have a large decrease. So we have at least two, and maybe I think three positions that are coming from DCE into the mayor's office. So that's part of the reflection, number one. Number two, part of the increase is due to the staff directly related to council and mayoral initiatives identified at the retreat. We've not ever had somebody that's dealt specifically with homelessness issues before, and we've seen a lot of progress because we have someone that can coordinate that effort within the city. Likewise with housing, likewise with tribal partnerships and policy. So those are all initiatives that have been identified and funded because the council and the mayor said these are high priorities. And third, if you look back at the last couple of years' budget, the mayor's office budget has been way lower than the auditor budget and the council budget. And this really puts it more in parity with those two offices. It is now the highest of those three, but it's been the lowest of those three. I think the reason for that difference, we just explained two of those reasons, but the mayor's got a big responsibility for managing the affairs of the city, and this budget is reflective of that responsibility, especially when you consider those other two factors.
As a follow-up, and I know you have Lori too. I don't know. I'm hesitant to compare those like apples to apples office-wise, but I hear what you're saying about moving positions. Is it possible to get some kind of details? Because I think otherwise, I think the optics, this is not a story I'm telling, like I don't see that necessarily in this, but it ends up looking like, hey, we had to make all these cuts X, Y, and Z places, and then this one grew a lot. And that's like, right, you know, that could be hard to explain unless we have those details going, this moved from over here, this moved from over here, in which case, per your point, then you see that scaling, because I'll acknowledge, for instance, when Mayor Bynum came into office, he had a pretty large cabinet that he filled out, and it was smaller over time, so by the time, that Mayor, Nichols is coming in, Mayor Bynum had like 2 people, he moved other people into civil service, and so, it's not like you're doing something unprecedented by any stretch, but it's just a little hard to explain when we're talking, again, cuts elsewhere, and then a big growth, and it would just be helpful to show, kind of more directly be able to tell that story of this is where those numbers came from.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll just tag on to that. I do think the talking points about, like, what we heard was a 3 to 4% cut budget. The budget's actually grown from last year because our revenues have grown because of inflation and our costs have grown, right? So I think last year we were at 1.023 billion, if I'm not mistaken, and now we're at 1.17 billion. So to the public, we're not in a cut budget, and I just say that because the first 2 or 3 terms years I was on, we were in cut budgets, literally. And I'm looking at James because he had to unfortunately help lead that. So I think it's really important that the framing that Councilor Bellis just outlined is like, we asked for cuts in departments to then reallocate resources to these other priorities is really what we're doing.
Yeah, pardon me, I'd like to address some of that whenever
Sure.
you're done, but forgive me for interrupting.
Yeah, the other thing, quick math, so the 3 positions moving from DCE, I think I'm not sure what those positions are, but that's the total of 414. So if you take the 414 out of the 945, that leaves 531. Are you saying that this 531 is being allocated across the 16 appointees or the 13 that we're at right now?
So I'm not trying to do that math in my head while,
Okay,
while
but
we're
when
at
we're
the table,
talking,
but yeah.
when we're talking about like the senior advisor to housing and stuff, that's where that other 531's going.
Right, no.
Across those.
Yeah, we would
Okay.
say that the mayor's office appointees are more than were last year with Mayor Bynum. And we've talked about the reason why is we've got completely new priorities and offices that the council's identified as well. So whatever the math works out to,
Okay,
then
and then
yes.
are we at 16 total on the appointees or 13?
We're under 13.
Yeah,
We're at 12, but then these 3 from the DC are not part of the appoint. Okay.
So additionally, one note on one of the positions from DCE, I'm gonna call it Juniper, because I think folks know.
Well, she's in Georgia again,
Yeah.
right?
I didn't understand. Holly, what?
So Juniper was the woman who held the position in DCE, which I think, what was her title?
Urban design planner.
An urban design planner. That position is actually moving to the Department of Resilience and Equity, and actually from a conversation with you, Councilor Ballas, going to be a grants, like cross-department grants person, and additionally help with some of the Arts Commission staffing work.
Okay.
So that is another technical change that will have to be reflected in our budget. The sort of 3 overarching buckets that are included in the mayor's office now. So the Office of Public Art, that position is in the mayor's office budget.
That's the one of the 3.
Correct.
DC.
The-
That was Helen.
Okay.
The $150,000 Vision Arts grant, which is still, it's intact, right? That $150,000 is now within the mayor's office budget.
That's part of that 945.
Correct.
Okay.
The additional,
So our annual allocation,
No, just the person is not.
Just the
yeah.
person.
Just the person, okay.
Yeah,
the staff that supports that work.
yeah,
Yes.
correct. That's correct.
To allocate the 150 a year.
Correct.
Got it. But not the
so
actual 150.
the public advocate position was within DCE. It started out in the mayor's office.
Jared Fothergill.
Yeah.
Went to DCE, is now back in the mayor's office.
So those 3 total this 414 on page.
Well, so with the additional correction of the strategic planner, the Juniper position is actually now within a different department. So it's a technical correction
So
that
there's
needs to
2
happen.
positions.
Yeah.
Here, one going somewhere else, but totaling 414.
Well, it'd be 414 minus the 80 to 100,000 for that other.
Yeah, all 3 positions equal 414.
Yes.
On the bottom line.
Yes.
Okay, so 945, so then that is this 531 across the 13 appointees for this fiscal, if I'm understanding how Mr. Miller explained it to us.
Yes, no, thank you, and I'm catching up. Pardon me for being slow earlier.
I said 531
No.
is allocated to the 13 of the 16. The mayor gets 16 appointees, 13 are seated. So 531 is going across those 13 to create the appointees that are addressing the priorities of the mayor and the council. I do have a question. So during 3H task force, we talked about staffing 2 positions on housing. At the end of last year, I thought we budgeted for that. Is that contemplated in this budget, or are those not happening and these are happening? There was like
Well,
housing
I don't know if it'd be-
navigators.
Would it be in the mayor's office?
I just
Would it
mean
be-
functionally.
Yeah, they're not in this, they're not reflected in the mayor's office.
Right, I'm just going back to what you said, like, these are positions that we haven't had before for priorities, but I think in the last fiscal, we funded 2 positions for housing, navigation, something.
Oh, yeah, there was
I
like
might-
the
I might,
commissioning stuff too.
So what?
They weren't funded.
They were not, it was just an idea. Okay, so now kind of functionally in some parts of what Jean is doing and what Emily is doing is taking care of those wish list functions
Yeah.
under 3H.
Yeah, and they've created that housing acceleration team, you know,
Okay.
for sort of jumping on a permit application if it was for like a large, you know, housing development.
And that's the navigator type.
Essentially, it's like a team approach to it.
Okay, okay, thank you, just trying to track. Also, the grant position, we did get half funded or something, or we were looking for half
Yeah,
funded.
it was partial, and then I had found outside dollars to leverage, but it sounds like we've decided.
And
that
now
we
it's
need
just gonna be
those.
in-house on this transition DCE role.
That $30,000 though is still within the finance budget, which Krista
Okay.
can speak to.
Okay,
So that has
sorry,
to-
just trying to keep track of positions we approved last year, but I don't think ever actually got posted or hired, and functionality that are now being taken care of in other places.
Yeah, and then as a kind of follow-up framework question, and I felt like this is something, Councilor Director Wright, you verbalized, and I saw Mike maybe start to go, oh, I'd want to reframe something, so maybe this might be something that you were alluding to that maybe you can provide some clarity on, that I just think fits with the larger scope. You know, I just had mentioned, hey, the optics of we made these cuts and then this looks like this grew, we just cleared up and that's really helpful. But I think also, these are constituent questions I've got where it's like, hey, we're talking about cuts, but the budget compared to last year's bigger, which I know that's just like this very flat, like, that's just like, and I understand there's planning your budgets and revenue and unassigned fund balances and a lot of pieces there, but that's been kind of hard to explain to constituents why the dialogue is, there's cuts or even like this framework of like a concept of a deficit budget, which then has also led to questions of, oh, there were past mayor and past councilors, which includes many of us, illegally budgeting, which is, I know, not the case, but I think I've gotten those questions because it comes across that way with some of the public messaging. So if you could clarify what we're actually saying when we talk about cuts and why we need them.
Sure. So, one is if we go to our page 3.5 in our book, right? And that'll talk about just maybe the very big picture, 3.5. You'll turn in your hymnals, like I'm in church, but.
I don't know that one.
So right in the middle of the page, there's a column, or on the far left column, it says resources, less outlays, and then you read that across. And so that basically shows our use, our planned use of fund balance. And we've talked about this was kind of a key element of the retreat that we had, is how do we try and get that number down to 0? Because that's us spending our savings account on operations, and we don't want to do that. So the big picture that I think you're asking about is, number one, when we had our budget presentation, it went up, it showed a bigger number than last year. And so the mayor addressed that, and it's in the transmittal letter as well, primarily due to capital funding. Operational funding went up about 2.5%. But when we have to take into account is it went up 2.5% over the plan. We spent a lot more than the plan, or we ended up budgeting a lot more than the plan. The mayor talked a little bit about this in his presentation as well. We approved salaries and salary increases higher than we originally planned, right? We didn't do that before the end of the fiscal year, so whenever we made salary negotiations with the union groups, those came in higher. We had things that we didn't budget for in '26, and some of those have been asked, are the questions that you all have asked, including, some continuation of some works with the Graves investigation. Right, so those are things that weren't budgeted in the plan year, but are things that are service levels that we have intended to continue. And so that's what it looks like, a difference in the increase in spending. So to get to where we got, again, we were about $22 million planning to spend more than we had revenues projected to come in. And that's maybe the long convoluted answer, but there's not really simple answers. When we spend more than we say that we're going to spend, then that throws the next year's budget off too. So that's the short answer. I see that I did not do a good job
No, I think
explaining.
I'm
She's
more-
thinking about the next question.
No, I'm more curious about,
Yeah.
the unassigned fund balance element there, or what we would do if we don't factor them in proactively, but. I don't know, I'll
I
let
have a
Counselor
question
Dr.
about
Wright.
calling the unassigned fund balance a savings account. We have a rainy day fund and an emergency capital fund that are savings accounts.
Sure.
So, one thing that I have come to understand as we have been digging into this is normally unappropriated and unassigned fund balances we have used for one-time expenses. Last year, we had a strong ask to scale at multifamily inspections, and I think those revolving costs of personnel were taken care of with the year-end fund balance, if I'm looking over here at our.
Yeah.
So that is not something we
Yes.
typically do.
I would say a very,
That's
a
a
very
very small
small
number.
portion of unassigned.
But as
fund
I
balance
understand
was
it, we
paid with.
usually do one-time expenses, not ongoing on the, so we get to the end, we go, we outperformed our revenues because we conservatively project our revenues. The other thing I just do wanna amplify is we are required by law to pass a balanced budget every year. We have a city attorney, a whole finance department, city councilors. So I really do take issue with like the deficit budget structuring that I've been hearing, because I don't think that's accurate to say that we've been approving deficit budgets. I think what's accurate is our expenses have outweighed what we had started our budget, which our budget's a plan. We don't have a predictor of straight line winds at 100 miles an hour coming through our city, overtime for fighting fires, and, reciprocity agreements, mutual aid. So we do have overtime that it's mostly going to overtime at the end of the year. Or some sort of emergency capital need, like a roof repair or something that's just outside of funding timing. So I want to be very careful around that, because by state statute, we are required to pass balanced budgets every year. The other thing that I did not see, and it's been a big discussion, and I think we'll continue to discuss it in small budget, is how we prepare for overtime. We know we're understaffed in policing, there's going to be overtime. We know firefighters historically are needing overtime to be taken care of at year end. So those unassigned fund balances will be spent, they just can't be stuffed into a savings account, and then we don't take care of those obligations at the end of the year. So I just want to be very careful about how we're talking about these things. I do appreciate that the proposed budget tops off the rainy day fund, because we did have to dig into it to take care of a historic event that hit our city. So last year, we prioritized over some of the other initiatives that we wanted, and that was Mayor Bynum's directive, like he wanted to leave office, bringing that back to a healthy place, and I think we're at like 8.5, and so you are proposing to take it back to 10, which I think is super responsible, because we don't have a crystal ball other than knowing historically something that we have not planned is going to impact our city, whether it's Mother Nature or otherwise. So I just want to be real clear on the responsibility and fiduciary, requirements of this body.
One thing I might just say, and point well taken, in addition to talking about those things, one of the things I think I've stressed over and over again is that the growth and the number of folks working at the city, all the things that have been done that have caused us to spend the way we have were things that were very necessary. And so the budget that you have actually maintains most of those things. And so, like, I don't want anybody here to think that there's an attitude in the mayor's office or within the budget team that there is this frivolous, out of control, nobody paying attention type stuff, because we're preserving as much of it as we possibly can. What I came to understand once I took office is that kind of given where we were going and given where we were from a revenue and a spending standpoint, we were at like a $15 million gap or 22, whatever it was. And so when we talk about, the cuts that had to be made, it's like we're trying to your point, when it comes to these one-time expenses, trying to reduce the use of fund balances for anything that we know is going to be reoccurring, because there's one thing, and I think that's our responsibility to present you all with the best way of doing that. Because I could say that, oh, this is a one-time thing this year, and the next year, the same thing was one-time thing last year, is one-time thing this year. And so we're trying to do is say, like, let's go, we have enough trend data now to tell us what's more than a one-time expense. And I think the overall proposal that you have in front of you is to say, yeah, we're in a space where we've grown. In most cases, we're not questioning or saying that the growth is absolutely necessary. Even after the mayor-council retreat, I think it may have even been Kevin that asked me about it. And I said, over the last several years, last 4 years in particular, the city's had to live through a pandemic, live through a flood, live through what could only be kind of considered maybe a hurricane that blows through in about 20 minutes and knocks out power everywhere. All these things that happen, and preparing for those in the future is all important. So I do want to say, point well taken on how we talk about it and the clarity that needs to be there. But I hope everybody also understands that everything we talk about at the retreat and everything, the decisions that those of you have made before I got here, are things that we're trying to preserve because we see the value of them. And so I do want to make sure I say that very clearly.
Mr. Miller, and then we're really going to move on.
Sure, I'm sorry. The mayor said it very well. I do want to agree with what Councilor Dr. Wright said in a whole lot of ways, because we absolutely are passing budgets that are correct and true and doing the job exactly as should be done. And really, whatever terminology we use, as long as we're trying to get that resources less outlays number to zero, because those are our recurring expenses by and large, right? This is our operating budget. So when we've got to try and get that number down to zero, and then we have money at that, then we have that fund balance at the end of the year that we can do for one-time expenses, instead of eating away at it. And that's really
True one-time expenses.
True one-time expenses, and that's really where we're trying to go, and you're right, we need to be careful about the words that we use to say that. But that's really what we're focused on, is that resources, less outlays, and trying to get that to a zero level.
So overtime will be part of not this line item, is the goal.
We budget for overtime every year.
Not adequately. That's why we have to use year-end fund balances. And I didn't see.
Until there's no year-end fund balances, and then we're in a real.
Then we use the rainy day fund, that would be a responsibility.
And I know we do have a whole meeting set up to talk about that in the future, and so that's a great idea.
Yeah, I mean, I do think this is another, sorry, I know we got to move on, but I mean, I do think this is, as we think about even the conversation we were having about the mayor's office, I point to a new position, the Commissioner of Public Safety, helping us get on top of those things as we think about the alleys, and making sure we're thinking about that kind of from a 360-degree view. And so I think our goal and our desire is that we can better, predict what overtime is going to look like, budget for overtime. And so there might be a need to dip in fund balance for overtime at some point, but not to the tune of $6 or $9 million or something like that, So trying to get on top of that. And so I do think as we go through and we have a discussion about how we're trying to accomplish all these things, there will be some things that look significantly different than they looked in the past. And to the point from some folks, you may be asked about those things. And I will say, and I don't know how many times I'll come down here, and so I'll say this, and maybe you'll never invite me back down again. But as you see those things, know the desire from me as mayor, as your partner here at City Hall, was to put together a team in the mayor's office that allows us to deliver on the initiatives we talked about, manage this organization well, and make sure we can begin to build toward the future. And part of that is within the confines of maybe some financial controls that are also really hard. Like, you all are doing something that's really, really hard, taking a big organization with a big role across this community and within this region and trying to fund it. That's not an easy thing to do. But But what we have put in front of you, both from an administration standpoint, but also in this, is really trying, as we said before, finish the work that we started. I think that was the theme of the retreat. Deliver on the initiatives that people are calling us to do, and create direct accountability as it relates to that in the mayor's office and throughout the organization. And what you see here and what you'll hear from in other departments is what I hope is, what you can see as a reflection of those priorities. So really appreciate you all, so.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Wagner, you're up. You have 11.5 minutes.
All right.
And we're really focused in on understanding changes due to reorganization, anticipated reductions due to position elimination, any changes in the capital program plan as well.
All right.
Okay. No, I'm here.
You're gonna stay.
I'm gonna stay here.
All right.
Stay-
We
Joe,
got 11 minutes.
James.
Here we go. No. So I prepared sort of a two-page summary for you, and my goal really is to address two questions here. And one is, where did the folks that got moved out of the Department of City Experience go? And we've covered a little bit of that in this discussion so far. And then the second page, the back side of that page is what are the budgetary reductions in what was the Department of City Experience, and what are the service level impacts for those. So I'll start on page one, has the number one at the bottom of it there. So as has already kind of been covered, so I'll cover it quickly. Animal Services was a division of Department of City Experience. So everything on the gray boxes on the left were divisions inside the Department of City Experience. And then the sort of, I guess, tan maybe is the color boxes are representative of departments. So Animal Services became an independent department. So did the Mayor's Office of Resilience and Equity, now called the Department of Resilience and Equity. And the positions that were in those divisions moved with them. So pretty straightforward on that, yes.
Wait, sorry, on this, because just for clarification. So Animal Services, 45 positions, was there 45 positions in the gray box that is now over?
That is correct.
So the money followed the people?
Yep, that's
Thank
exactly
you.
correct.
But
Yep.
in the plan year, it's reducing down to 45 and a half positions.
Let's,
I'd have to look at theirs.
Okay,
I'm
that's
not
on
sure.
page 418.
Yeah, Sarah might be able to answer that.
finish your presentation.
Yes,
and then
okay,
we'll
yes.
questions.
So the probably more complicated one that we've talked a little bit about here is what happened to the city design studio. So essentially the staff within that group went to 4 different places. One, which was what Dana talked about just a little while ago, is the director of the city design studios position transitioned to the director of the mayor's office of public art and community partnerships, which is direct report to the deputy mayor in the mayor's office. So that's one of those 2 positions that was talked about earlier. The second group, a group we were calling city projects, this is the group that's managed by Mary Womble and manages the capital projects for the city. So that group is now becoming the City Architectural and Building Services, and it's moved into the Parks Department under Anna America, who is the other deputy city administrator. And that combines that group with which Anna now oversees the asset management group, which is responsible for the maintenance of the city's assets. So kind of combining the people who are designing the city's buildings with the people who are maintaining them. We talked a little about the urban design planner, and that's moved and become a commissions and grants assistant. It will be supporting the Arts Commission inside of the Department of Resilience and Equity. So sort of splitting its time between working on arts and then grants as the focus for that. And then the urban strategist position, which was focused on community engagement, has moved into the communications department. And there'll be a communications officer, but focused on community engagement. Special events, pretty straightforward, move to development services. Kind of the thinking there was this is a permit. It's a permit type function. Now reports to Danette Williams, which is a direct report of Michael Skates. The citizen advocate was retitled the public advocate and moved to the mayor's office. That's the second position that we talked about earlier. Code enforcement, no changes, stays within the department that I manage, which is now called Planning and Neighborhoods. And then the planning office, mostly no changes except for we did so we had a division called Community Development and Housing. Some of you remember Rodrigo Rojas was the director of that group. So we split that group into two. So one group was the neighborhoods group. That's where our neighborhood liaisons are, the folks that kind of produce the Neighborhood Academy program that you're familiar with. That is moved into the planning office. And then the other half of that group is the housing group, and those folks are under Travis Hulse. And so housing is now a division in the Planning and Neighborhoods Department, although it reports directly to Gene Bullnash, which is the mayor's senior advisor on housing. So, but for administrative purposes, it's in the Planning and Neighborhoods Department, because creating a separate department for that would create a lot of administrative overhead that just really isn't
So
needed.
Travis Holz is the civil servant at the
Yep.
top of that's reporting to the appointee.
That is
Okay.
correct. Yep. But when you see it in the budget, it will be reflected in the Planning and Neighborhoods budget, because administratively, that's where it is.
Got it.
But he receives his direct report, guidance from Gene. Yeah. So that's essentially that's the organizational side. I know we're close to running out of time, but that's essentially a summary. And so what's on the far right there is essentially the structure of the Planning and Neighborhoods Department as it now exists, with the remaining elements within it. I did fail to mention there's a Performance and Accountability Office. So that office was known as the Office of the Chief Data Officer. We're kind of reframing that group, similar to what it used to be when it was the Performance and Innovation Office, when I ran it in the kind of early years of that, kind of focused on measuring outcomes of the priorities of the city, and really trying to think about ways in how we improve processes to achieve those outcomes. So that's what that office is focused on.
So James, thanks for this. So on page 440, where it says special events, fiscal year 26-27, 0 on staffing, it's just to reflect the movement out of the previously named department.
That
I
is
think
correct.
This is very helpful,
So you
because
will
that
see-
looked shocking to
You will
me.
see it in the Development Services. If you were to go to Development Services page.
Not in planning and neighborhoods.
That is correct, yeah.
Okay, I think it might be helpful just for future, when things like this are happening, either this accompanies it, or there's a note here that says, see also,
Where it's going.
yeah, the increase in
Right.
here,
We made a lot
because
of guesswork painting the picture of the zeroed out things. and
the
not
other
knowing
thing
why.
is just constituency 0, and they go, what the heck, they're cutting all these positions, and then we're trying to speak to it, and we don't really know. So this is
Yep.
very helpful, and I know this is part of the process, but obviously you all who prepared this already knew this roadmap existed. And I will say, I am proud of constituents who did look at the budget, because we've been asking them to participate more in it over the last few years, and we've even talked about participatory budgeting, which I don't think we're doing. But people have educated themselves on how to read it, and I don't know if you all did, but I got a lot of questions about all the things that we said to Sarah. So any kind of little breadcrumbs that we can leave would be so helpful, because, it would save a lot of flare-up over a week's time before we get to talk about it.
I'll move just quickly, I know we're close on time, but the second page, the back side of that page, is the budget side of things. So as everyone is aware, departments were asked to shoot for a target between 3% and 4% of their general fund budget to make reductions. So every department either, recommended reductions or revenue increases that would offset those. So our target was $497,000. I'm sorry, our target was between 408 and 544. That would be the 3 to 4%. And so we did submit vacant positions as our budget reductions. We didn't have a lot of ways to generate revenue, so that was our what we submitted. The result of that, just kind of again broken down by the Department of City Experience divisions as they previously existed. Animal Services was reduced by about $36,000 in their utilities and equipment management. That was just kind of looking at historical expenses. I think they might have been a little bit over what they were actually spending on those items, and so reducing that. And then kind of skipping all the way down, no reductions in those next 4 groups. And then skipping down to code enforcement, eliminating 1 vacant position for a neighborhood inspector. We, as many departments do, we have kind of cyclical vacancies. So I went back because I thought it'd be helpful for you all to know. The last time we had all of the neighborhood inspector positions filled was January of 2023. So, you know, there's kind of a persistent vacancy, if you will, there. Not to say that we couldn't get to a point where we were completely staffed. If that were the case, if we were completely staffed, we're talking about 1,900 cases a year in terms of the service level impact. And of course, that, you know, means increased kind of wait time to get code enforcement cases inspected. In the planning office, there was actually 3 vacancies that were eliminated. There were 2 senior planners, one of which had actually never been filled since we moved the planning office over to the city in July of 2023. The other was a vacant position that's been vacant since July of last year. And then the third is a planner position that is vacant since September of last year. So one of the things that Susan really wanted to make sure is that we prioritize the positions that were that were serving the Planning Commission, the Board of Adjustment, and knowing how important that is for those cases to keep moving. So, so that was the priority here, is making sure we didn't have a service level impact on those commissions. And then finally, removing the vacancy of the previous director of the Community Development Office, which now no longer exists. So that position also was eliminated. So those are, and then as I said before, there was 4 individuals that moved from the Community Development Office into the Planning Office. Those are the neighborhood, what we call the Neighborhoods Group. And so now they're within the Planning Office. So that's how we kind of absorbed that loss of that position. So that's really what I have. So,
Jen,
yeah.
awesome job. Okay, we're gonna bring Parks up. So you can stay
Thank you.
at the
Thanks,
table.
Jen.
I'll stay, yeah.
Okay, so up for Parks. Yeah, sit wherever.
I'm trying to figure out where.
You can sit in my chair.
Yeah.
My chair is not a strict chair.
I'll be super fast, and I don't have a presentation or anything on America,
So the,
various things.
you know what you're supposed to
Focus
talk
was
about.
on reductions is what I was told you guys were primarily
Reductions
interested
due
in.
to position eliminations,
And impact
material
on
supplies,
service.
mowing cycles, capital program, source of funds for golf and river parks.
I have a list of some of the reduction questions.
Okay.
Just the mowing reductions was a little alarming.
Okay, yeah, there are a couple things there that weren't on my list that I'm not necessarily prepped on the outside of parks, but I'll go through as fast as I can broadly the parks things. Parks, Culture and Recreation Department, you guys have already, in our budget's a little confusing to look at. We did a lot of internal, we took this super seriously, and the entire department really went through line by line and kind of looked at how we could do anything more efficiently. So there's one thing that I know there was a question about that was presented.
425 is where
Sorry, we're
Parks
trying to get on your
starts.
budget.
Sorry.
I'm trying to find you.
That it was part of our actual budget presentation. It wasn't presented as a reduction, but it came out of that really thorough kind of line-by-line analysis of how we could be more efficient. We had 2 really awesome people who are in a position called mechanical journeyman for us, who do HVAC and other types of things like that. And one in particular who'd been here forever and had evolved into where he was doing lots of different things, who happened to retire. But and really looking closer at the budget, we recognized that because of many of the people at this table who have helped fund the capital investments in parks over the past 5 years, you guys know, I think, those of you who've been around for a while, we had roofs and air conditioning units and electrical things that were decades old. So it turns out, when you replace things and you start taking care of them, you don't actually need full-time HVAC techs to go trying to keep a 45-year-old system running. So we decided, rather than filling those positions, we wanted to convert that money into contract work to do those 2 vacant positions into HVAC contract to do ongoing maintenance, rather than having to do real, major system rehab and repair on an ongoing basis, and then convert the bulk of it into some Arthur Presley, who some of you may know, who was that wonderful technician, and also dad to some of the best athletes in the Tulsa area. But he had gotten to where he was fixing everything kind of across the city, but so we're adding contract work in HVAC, electrical, plumbing that will help maintain the investments that Arthur helped us get there. And then a chunk of that will go into forestry. And again, to help preventative maintenance, we're we're still behind in forestry. It will be for a while. It's gonna take a lot to kind of crawl back and get where we need to be funding forestry, but the more we can do preventative and the more work we can do to take care of things as we go along, the less big picture work. So I just wanted you guys to realize, because somebody asked about that, and that was just part of our overall budget presentation. And then our reductions specifically, the areas where we came back in with the targeted reductions, camp counselors and pool staff were a big chunk. We had in both of those areas, for a variety of reasons, and I don't know exactly what the original allocations were, but we've been overfunded every year. We've actually filled those positions fully in the last couple of years. We've done a great job recruiting, and we were able to make those cuts, including a pay increase for those employees this year. And so there'll be no impact on service in either of those areas. That was just money that was getting unspent in our camp counselor and our lifeguard accounts. And then we also, it's all sort of lumped together in here, but we cut $40,000 out of what's called, I forget what we call the category, but it's what we use to pay a fair number of our classes at the rec centers. Some of them, there are all different ways that some of them are taught by staff, permanent staff. Some are rentals, some are partnerships, but many of the classes are temp. They're technically city employees, but they come in as temps. And again, we had extra money that wasn't being used in those accounts, so it ended up being a couple thousand, around 3,000 for each of those rec centers, for most of the rec centers. But again, that will have little, if any, impact. One of the things I think we've seen with our programming is we have really worked in the last couple of years to do more and more partnerships with others within the community, so that so lovely things like the Opera Trail hike that we had out at Oxley last weekend, but we have so many assets within the community, and we're doing a lot of programming now, working with Life Senior Services and others, so we can do some of this program jointly, and we're not having to hire instructors to do it. You mentioned there are lots of small cuts in other areas that I won't go into. I mean, $1,000 here, $1,000 there. As I said, we went through line by line. One other area where we were able to make we believe we'll have some significant savings, and again, it goes back to really investing in improved maintenance on the buildings, but pretty significant increases. I'm pretty proud of the fact that even as costs have gone up on all of our utilities, we've been able to reduce costs, especially around electric and water, by really working on conservation, putting in, all the basic things that we all know, but LED lights and timers and things like that. But the other big area is mowing, and that will be the one area where there will be certainly an impact on service. We currently, citywide mowing out in the parks in general, we have 16 cycles. Every 2 weeks is when that mowing is, weather permitting. You guys know, between rain and ozone alert, sometimes those cycles don't stay perfect. And downtown, it's every week during that time. What we had proposed and what the mayor's office had accepted, citywide mowing going from 16 to 13 cycles. Our goal will be to reduce those in July, the hottest months of the summer, when essentially we're in Oklahoma, everything's dead, so it's really not and we tend to that's when we get those ozone alert times. So we think we can do that with very minimal visible impact. You guys know in your own yards kind of what's going on there. And then the downtown mowing reducing from 32 to 16 cycles. So those will be where downtown we mow Chapman Green, the dog park, the Legacy / Archer, whatever, there are different names for that park. So just a few things downtown, but that will be at that same cycle as the rest of the city parks. Actually, it'll be 16, and the rest of them at this point would be at 13, but they will be at the cycle that the other city parks have been outside of downtown. So happy to answer questions on any of that.
Just 3 properties downtown that we take care of?
We do Cathedral Square, except we're working with them to take over, with the church to take over that. It's very minimal, and then there's a little bit of grass at the Plaza of the Americas, so very small. Archer, Chapman Green is the biggest one that is most obvious, and then what we call Legacy Park, but it doesn't actually have a name there, but the property,
Archer.
the green space that is.
Archer and Denver or something like that.
Yeah, next to Coney
Or
Island.
Cheyenne or, yeah, whatever.
That piece.
A, B, or C is on that side.
And Gumbo, I forget if Gumbo is in the downtown cycle, just on the, on 11th there, Gumboat South and Gumboat North where the dog park
I
is.
thought you were saying gumbo. I was
What about
like, I am really
Keepers?
hungry,
That's
yes.
not part of
That's
that.
outside of
That's outside.
And I should, it's, even though it's outside, it's on the same, it's on the same contract.
So
with
Dream
Keepers
Keepers is also in this. That one and Dream Keepers is a lot of grass.
And
Yes.
Centennial. Sorry, good reminder that, yeah, those are outside of the downtown, but they're on our same side.
But they're on that cycle.
Yeah.
And we've had issues with Chapman, I know, Counselor Dallas has had to.
Yeah.
That's a fun one.
Do you, but you think with this different cycle, it's not gonna be that drastic, like, or when you guys, grass grows at whatever pace it grows, so.
Right, that is our hope. I mean, my preference would be that I had money to mow all of these once a week across the city, but we don't, and we think that that this will have a minimal impact. I'll say that, and always weather can throw such a kink in the mowing. I mean, that, if it's too wet, they can't mow, and then they get behind, and then it'll dry up, and then we get ozone alert days, and we don't allow any of our contractors to mow on ozone alert days. So you do get in those cycles where then they're desperately trying to catch up. We have a mowing inspector who goes around, and that's almost his full-time job during the season, is going around kind of checking and keeping track. So I think this is something that we believe can be done with a minimal impact. It's certainly not no impact. I mean, I won't say that it's no impact, or else, that's the whole point of mowing, is you are cutting the grass. But we'll be tracking it really closely, and I think if you guys see, this is one I know, this is like lights out. I mean, it's one of the things that counselors will immediately
I will
get a
hear
call
about,
if you
yeah.
see issues. Please let me know right away. I mean, we want to stay really on top of this to make sure that if we start seeing service slip, I think it's something that we'll have to adjust during. I mean, I know we feel pretty strongly, and I know you guys do as the people who get the first line of calls, that mowing is one of the things. It's like graffiti or something that people really see as you not doing a good job taking care of if you're not staying on top of it. So our intent is to make sure that we're sticking with them, and that there is not a visible impact on service. But if you guys see anything, it's important to
I'll let you know,
call me.
because my most frequent grass that I hear about is the natural growing grass at Gathering Place, and how hypocritical it is that we just let that do that, but then making people mow their lawns. So I'll let you know if I hear about this. Just as a quick clarifier, and you mentioned related to forestry, but the tree trimming budget was cut by 40K, which just bothers me.
So there's a little confusion on moving when they were,
moved.
that's gonna get
Okay.
fixed. I didn't wanna get into the,
No.
that
Okay.
one will get, Well, I saw that too, and I was like, wait, and it turns out there was we had to go back and forth on some of these, and it was because we added money, and then we said, okay, take some of what we're adding out off, and I think it got, there was a miscommunication that has already been corrected communicating wise. But we will be adding money to forestry, not taking away.
Okay, thank you.
And you guys will get that as a technical correction, I believe.
Any comments on river parks? I don't know if you have the budget in front of
I
you.
don't have it memorized or in
So it looks
front of
like,
me. Christie is a little bit more,
86 for operations generally, and 53 for Zinc Lake operations. So
And-
those are the two
and I'm gonna have,
big operational
Christie and I have
cuts.
talked about it, and she's coming up here, and I don't wanna say something without having the numbers in front of me that's incorrect, so I'll let her.
Yeah, so for the river parks, for their operating fund and their trails, MK and T Trail, or, I might. Katy Trail, that did have a 4% cut. And then the zinc operations, they were actually less than what the plan was.
Their request.
So really, looking at the operating side, we're looking at about a 4% cut. And then on the capital side, there wasn't a cut there, because that's not in the general fund.
Yeah, it looks about even, right?
Yeah.
180 down and 185 down and 180
Yeah, I think they
up.
had a change in their request on zinc, so that was
Okay.
that $5,000 decrease.
Does this include the potential, this would be more capital side of things, but moving the trailhead for Katy Trail, is that still a conversation?
That wasn't proposed as part of the budget.
Okay, it's okay if it's not, that's just been a conversation in the past.
related to neighborhood planning kind of stuff over there?
Yeah, I think that would be, I mean,
Okay.
we can talk more about that from a capital
Okay.
planning standpoint. And I think there was also a question I heard on golf, which I wasn't prepped on, but I'll just say generally, without even looking on what's on here, because of the transition, you guys, I think, know we had new managers take over April 1st. So for a budget, because we had to put a number in here, what we agreed to do was use they're operating on the same budget for current year essentially that was there. But because all of the bidders, we had 9 bidders, and they had submitted pro formas, we used that number as a placeholder in the budget. We knew coming in, I mean, they have been there a matter of days, just a few weeks now, and setting out, and that we'll meet with them. I forget when we had determined in the next month or two to work on a more detailed budget, so.
Okay, one last question on River Parks, and then Counselor Dutton, and then we gotta be done. Okay, so tell me what you said about River Parks and the Zinc Lake operation element. They submitted something that was less than FY '26 plan?
On the zinc operations portion, it was less than the plan, and so we went with that number for zinc. And then on their operations, that goes, the part that supports them, that was reduced 4%.
And they had
Okay.
asked for an increase.
They had a certain increase.
Okay, so the 53 was related to what they asked for, and the 86 was just the 4% decrease for the general operations of trails, Turkey Mountain, everything else.
Yeah, operations and, yeah, these are the decreases.
And
The 78, the 8.
Yeah,
the operations typically, traditionally has been split between the county and the city, and Zinc Lake is the city's responsibility.
Okay. And did we ramp them up because they take over Zinc Lake operations last year?
That budget item wasn't an item before they took over Zinc Lake.
Okay. Well, I'll have more questions. I'm just getting information now. Okay, Counselor Dutton, and then Laura Jenkins.
I wait.
Okay. All right.
Done?
Thank you all very much. Let's take 7